Welcome to Contact Has Begun, brought to you by the grace of the World Puja Network, one of the last vestiges of truth concerning benevolent, spiritually and technologically advanced off-world visitors. Some refer to these visitors as our greater family of man or returning ancient ancestors. I am James Gilliland, your host, and our guests also include cutting-edge physicists, authors, teachers, and healers dedicated to the awakening and healing of humanity and the earth. Let the journey begin.
Greetings, this is James Gilliland with World Puja. We've got another great show. Today we've got Lloyd Pye. He's a researcher and author known for his work with the Starchild skull and intervention theory. Lloyd began writing in 1975, then became a screenwriter in Hollywood in the 1980s. In 1995, he found his passion writing nonfiction in alternative knowledge. Alternative knowledge is information rooted in mainstream science, but in areas normally kept from public discussion because they cast doubt on the currently accepted paradigms and dogmas of the mainstream. Lloyd's fields of expertise include intervention theory, the origins of life, of human life, of alien reality, of hominoid, Bigfoot, Yeti reality, right up our alley. And that makes him a dynamic platform speaker about alternative knowledge. So without any further ado, we want to welcome Lloyd to the show. Lloyd, are you with us?
Yes, I am, James, and thank you for that introduction. That makes me sound pretty good, doesn't it?
Yeah. What's the best way right up front? I mean, we'll give it again towards the end, but what's the best way for people to get in touch with you and maybe get your books and maybe you can let them know some of the books you've written?
Well, the best way to get in touch with me is obviously, like most people, through the websites, www.lloydpye.com. That's LLOYDPYE, lloydpye.com, for my intervention theory material. And then for the Starchild skull material, you go to www.starchildproject.com. That's the two words, Starchild and project together.com, and you'll find everything. The focus there is on the Starchild skull. The focus at lloydpye.com is on intervention theory. There's some cross-pollination between those two sites, but for the most part, we try to keep them separate.
Great. And we'll have those up on the website and on the show when people can tune in and check out, how to get in contact with you.
As far as the books that can be acquired, there's just a few things really that we sell. There's the book Everything You Know Is Wrong, which was what got me established in this field about 14 years ago now. And then I have a very recent ebook that I wrote as kind of a follow-up and an update on some of the areas of that book which were not deep history. A lot of Everything You Know Is Wrong is based on what's called deep history, which really just doesn't change. It is what it is. But there are some things that do change, and so in my new ebook, Intervention Theory Essentials, I've addressed some of those things that needed to be updated since 1997 when Everything You Know Is Wrong was published. Now, as far as the Starchild skull, there you have a book called The Starchild Skull, which I published in 2007, and to cover the first 8 years that I was involved in it. And then recently in 2010 and 2011, I've done an ebook about the Starchild skull called Starchild Skull Essentials. So you have Intervention Theory Essentials, Starchild Skull Essentials, and that ebook is meant to bring the latest information about the DNA analysis that we've had done in the last couple of years, which has been tremendously helpful in moving us forward in terms of understanding what the Starchild is and moving us toward that final day when we'll be able to sequence its entire genome and prove beyond a shadow of scientific doubt what we already know now is going to be the result. We just have to go from the partial results that we have to the complete total result that we will have when we can sequence the whole genome.
Mm-hmm. Now, for those who don't know what the Starchild is, I mean, most of the listeners do, but there's some out there that are not aware of what the Starchild is, maybe you can help shed some light on that.
Well, the Starchild skull is a real, true bone skull that was found in about 1930 in Mexico by a girl who, obviously, she wasn't going to know what it was. She just assumed it was a deformed human skull, and she kept it for her whole life, and she died in the early 1990s, and she passed it on to some friends, and after 5 years, they passed it on to some other friends, Ray and Melanie Young in 1998, and Ray and Melanie live in El Paso, and Melanie was a neonatal nurse for like 15 years, and Melanie knew that skull was not, in fact, a human deformity as had been assumed by everybody up to that point. And she wanted to find out what it really was. She tried to get some experts there in El Paso to take it seriously. None of them would. They all said, it's just got to be some kind of deformity. When she'd say, well, what kind? I don't know what kind it is. They'd say, well, we don't either, but it has to be some kind of deformity. They weren't interested in really exploring and seeking the truth about it. So that's how I got contacted, because of my work with human origins. As part of intervention theory, I knew a lot about skulls and talked a lot about skulls, not just human origins, but hominoids as well. It just was a confluence of events, lucky things, where I was the right guy in the right place at the right time for what they were looking for. So they contacted me and showed me the skull and said, can you find out what this is for real and don't just take no for an answer? And I said, well, absolutely. I do think it's probably going to turn out to be a deformity, but it doesn't hurt to check and make absolutely sure. So that was early 1999 when I saw it and they talked to me at first. Excuse me. Sorry, tickle in my throat. So by the end of the first year, by the end of 99, I had talked to enough experts who were convincing me that while they could not explain their part of what the skull had to offer to show them, it had to be a deformity. In other words, take it to an ear guy and he says, well, I can't explain these inner ears, the size of the inner ears, twice as big as ours, but what's that? Oh, gosh. I don't know how to turn that off, James, that sound when an email comes in.
Oh, yeah. Don't worry about it. We're not hearing it on this side.
Okay, good. So when the guy said, like, for example, as I said, the inner ear is twice as large, the brain very much larger, the eyes completely different, lack of sinuses, no inion, no knot in the back of the head, bone was too light, bone was too thin. I mean, everything about it began to stack up as wrong, as not human. But they would all tend to say, well, okay, I can't explain my thing, but all told, it has to be some kind of deformity. Well, when you hear that from a dozen guys and 15 guys saying the same thing, you realize this is not a human. It just can't be. And in fact, by the end of that year, I had pretty much established that there was not a part of the Starchild, not a physical feature of the Starchild skull that matched exactly a human skull. It was all different, completely different. And yet, it wasn't a child. It didn't die young. We thought at first, one of the first tests we had was x-rays, and that person said that it looked like a child to him, so we said, okay, Starchild. Mistake. It wasn't a child. It was a well up into adulthood individual when it died. We don't know what age it was, but it certainly wasn't a child. So it lived with all these differences, these deformities from the human norm, these variations from the human norm. It lived quite a long time. Now, in normal human dysfunction, as far as the skull goes, if you have one thing wrong, you can survive that. Two things wrong, you can survive that, even 900 years ago. But three things wrong 900 years ago, you got some serious problems. Four things wrong, five things, you're dead. They're getting rid of you because infanticide was not the big issue then that it is now. A faulty copy came out, they just got rid of it and tried again the next year. It was no big deal. So this is not what would have happened 900 years ago, that something would be born to a human mother looking like this and be acceptable I don't think. So, and it wouldn't have functioned. It had so many things different about it. So its brain, its eyes, its ears, its neck was different. I mean, everything about it was different. So it came down to science would not listen to those physical differences. They won't listen today, 13 years later. They don't care. Doesn't matter. One guy told me the best response I heard was, he said, Lloyd, I don't care if you stack up 10,000 of these physical differences. It doesn't matter. We can always say nature did it, because nature can do anything. The one thing nature can't do is fool with the genetics, fool with the DNA. That is the math of biology is DNA, because it's like a mathematical formula. It says the same thing every time. It's 2 + 2 = 4 every time. Once you establish what the formula is, it should say that every time. And it does. So that's why you have so many people sitting in jail now because of DNA evidence, and so many that are getting off from long extended sentences that were where DNA shows they didn't do it. So DNA rules. It doesn't matter how much the police don't appreciate that, how much the government doesn't appreciate it, how much the victims don't appreciate it when they think someone, did it. If the DNA says no, it doesn't matter how much is stacked up against it, the DNA wins. Well, we're in the very, very fortunate position with the Starchild skull to have that kind of advantage on our side. We have DNA evidence, and we can get more DNA evidence that is going to establish beyond a shadow of a doubt at some point that the Starchild was indeed an alien being not of planet Earth.
I think it's interesting that the problem with a lot of scientists is they're not very scientific.
They're not at all. Absolutely, they do not at all follow their propaganda. They are great at putting out propaganda about how infallible they are, and yet how open they are to change and difference. And their wonderful scientific method where when it's shown that things need to change, they will change. Well, that is true, but the change has to be overwhelming if it's not at just an incremental move forward. They're very happy to accept incremental steps forward where everybody can kind of go along with it and nobody really notices the ripple effect. But when someone somewhere takes a giant leap forward into another paradigm, then they all pull back on the reins and they say, whoa, 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 not so fast. We're not going there. We're not ready to go there yet. We can't all go in lockstep with you on that, so we have to hold it back. And that's what they do. So something like the Starchild establishing alien existence, alien reality, is a very big step in human history. And so that is one that can't be undertaken lightly, and so it won't be, and it hasn't been. We all know how much they fight and work against it. So, but here we are with the Starchild, with the one thing that I'm aware of that has the capacity to prove it really beyond a shadow of a doubt, beyond any degree of skepticism or criticism. If we can prove what we think we have, what we know we have now, it's just really a matter of time before we establish it.
I think it'd be interesting to ask them, just say, well, how many alien skulls have you worked on and have seen, And
that's what they're going to say. One of the things they're going to say is, how can you call it an alien if we don't have any aliens to match it up against? And that's going to be one of the arguing points, is going to be what's human and where do we draw the line to which we say anything beyond that line is not conceivably human and therefore has to be alien. And that's one of the arguments and the debates that we will have early into the discussion of the Starchild genome. Now, I'm convinced, that it's going to be so radically different that there's just no way they can cling to any form of any type of human deformity and say, like they did with the Hobbit. Let's look at the Hobbit, for example. Everybody knows what the hobbits are. These little people that were found on the island of Flores in Indonesia 8 years ago, somewhere in there. And when those things were found, they were found to be about 3 feet tall, fully upright, I mean, absolutely bipedal, but in no way do they have human physiology, human bones. And even the guys working on it will acknowledge there's not any human bones here. This thing doesn't look human in any way. The skull is like a monkey. The arms are too long. Everything about it, bones are robust. Just totally different from human. And yet they say it has to be human because it walked upright and it existed 13,000 years ago, 14,000 years ago, whatever it was. And so therefore it has to be some kind of pygmy human, even though there's nothing about it that is human, because they can't have anything not human walking upright. And this carries us into the subject of hominoids, which is Bigfoot and the abominable snowman, a Yeti, and all that. And the hobbits were just a form of hominoids. There is a pygmy form, clearly. There are hundreds of them all around the world's jungles that wrap around the Earth's equator. In those jungles live small, hair-covered, upright walking beings that have, literally dozens of names. Wherever they exist, they have a local name. They're called collectively Sodapas and Agagwis because that's two of the best known types. But on the island of Flores, they were called Ibugogo. The Ibugogo is what the Hobbit was, but of course the mainstream can't accept that, because the mainstream accepts upright walking primates 13,000 years ago, or at any time at all, it takes humans off the flowchart of natural life on Earth. And then they've got to confront the question of if we didn't evolve here, how the heck did we get here? And that's what they don't want to deal with on their watch. Now, what I've been talking about here is what I deal with in my ebook, and of course the book Everything You Know Is Wrong, that too, but in the new ebook, Intervention Theory Essentials, I go over a lot of what we're talking about right now to explain how what science is up against as they deal with these issues of UFOs and aliens and hominoids. Both of those subjects mean for them that humans didn't evolve on Earth. And as you know, that's one of science's most cherished concepts, is that humans evolved on Earth. And take that away, and it's just such a can of worms. Of worms they're going to have to deal with. And they just don't want to. Now, I don't blame them. And you wouldn't either. If you were one of them, if you'd gone through what they've gone through to get into their positions of power, that is not what you would want to wake up to one morning and see splashed on the front page of your local newspaper, because you would know from that day forward your life is just going to be hell trying to recover from the blow. So if you're in charge, you do everything you can to keep that happening, even though you know that it's going to happen, even though you know that these, crazy, loony alternative people like, Lloyd Pye and James Gilliland are saying the truth, talking about the truth. You don't want that to happen on your watch. You want to pass it on to the next poor schmuck that's going to sit in your chair. You want it to happen on his watch. But it's like, the wheel of fortune. You turn the wheel, that thing's going to stop on somebody sitting in the chair. Somebody is going to draw the bad hand. And so they fight to make sure that it's not them, but eventually it's going to happen, and the people like us, the alternative researchers, are going to win, or we're going to be proved right. There's just no doubt we've got the winning cards.
Yeah, the truth's on our side. A lot of people ask me that, well, why would they resist this or cover it up? And I said, well, think about it. If you have an extremely advanced civilization that knows more about God and the universe than we do, our origins, everything else, and they're going to come here, and they have fuelless energy technology to clean up the planet, and they've probably transcended disease and war and everything else. I said, do you really think the religions, the war industry, the oil industry, and the pharmaceutical industry want these guys landing, or to have any information coming from them?
Right. Yeah, they don't want change, James. I mean, this is the takeaway from me in dealing with scientists, up close and personal and nose to nose over the years that I have, and it's been a lot of years and a lot of scientists. They just don't want change. They don't, their propaganda is that they're all about change, that it's just, boy, we can't wait for the next change. And you hear them, their propaganda is, we would love it if we could prove that there were aliens out there. We're looking for them all the time. We're trying to catch their radio signals and all that. That would be, to them, trying to catch their radio signals the way we do with SETI and SETI and all that. It's the equivalent of looking for smoke signals. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Oh, and they did lay a crop circle right in front of one of their arrays there at Chilbolton, and I think Arecibo they did too. They did some work there. But, it was right in their face with a very intricate message, but that wasn't good enough. It's never going to be good enough until the evidence is so overwhelming that they just simply can't stand up to it anymore. And that's what I think makes the Starchild so important, because it has the potential to do that. It has not just the potential, the ability to do that, to produce a result that is so overwhelming it just can't be argued with. And that's everything else. As long as they can keep it into the world of being able to argue it, they will. But if you put them, confront them with something that they just simply can't negate, they can't ridicule it away, they can't ignore it away. I mean, here it is, deal with it. Then the change begins for everybody. And I think that the reason, and another question you're going to get obviously is, well, why are they letting this go forward? Why haven't I been stopped in all these years? And the answer, I think, is because the Starchild provides a beautifully interim solution to their problem. They know that disclosure has to happen. Sooner or later, a UFO is going to appear over, say, a sporting stadium in daylight where, 500 cell phone cameras are going to get a shot that'll just be undeniable. It's going to happen eventually. They know it. So the Starchild provides a nice interim solution in that it provides proof of alien reality 900 years ago. It does not establish proof of alien reality now. You see what I'm saying? Oh, yeah.
So while it allows those who want to move, like you and I are on the cutting edge, right? We want to move things forward toward the real truth, right? We're not afraid of it. But there are others out there who are absolutely terrified of doing that. They want to stay where we are now. They've got that Luddite mentality of this is good enough. And let's not worry about the future. Let's just live and enjoy the present where we are. So for those of us who want to go forward into the next step, the next phase, whatever that's going to be, those of us who aren't afraid of the future, the Starchild is a wonderful tool for us, a wonderful proof for us. It's something we really need to focus energy and enthusiasm on our view of things. It's like Republicans and Democrats, kind of thing. It's just a completely different mindset. But for those who are afraid of the future and don't want to go there and don't want to deal with it, but before they absolutely have to, they can always say, well, yeah, okay, well, maybe one existed 900 years ago, but that doesn't mean that we, they're here now or that we have to worry about it now. And they can go on and keep their head in the sand relative to that, while those of us who want to move ahead, and I'm including some scientists too. There are scientists out there that know this and think like we do, but they can't stand up and be counted because of in that world the nail that stands up really does get hammered, as John Mack and many others have found out. So they can't do it because pure disapproval is so prevalent in that field. But give them a little opening like the Starchild, and a lot of them are going to run with it.
Well, it does seem. I tell you what we've seen up here. I'll tell you a short little story that we actually filmed. I mean, I have boxes of footage of UFOs, undeniable footage with as many as 200 witnesses on the ground, and doing intention experiments, inviting them in where they fly right over the ranch. With people like Mary Rodwell and Dolores Cannon and Brooks Agnew. He's a biophysicist, and John Riley, he's a Lockheed engineer. And I've had triple PhD Boeing engineers actually testify that these ships are real and that they're here, and Air Force base commanders have actually gone public from here. This overwhelming evidence, and we filmed this one that landed on Mount Adams about 13 miles away, morphed into as many as 3 different ships, back to one again, did it 2 or 3 times, played all over the mountain for probably 45 minutes. Didn't have full 45 minutes footage of it though, and then it takes off, and a jet, is in pursuit, so we've got a military jet chasing it as well. And you have evidence like that, and we showed it to the OMSI planetarium, so this astrophysicist is there, and showed it to him, and on record with ABC News standing right next to him, he says, "Oh, that's nothing special. That's just the space shuttle." And
well,
it landed on the mountain. You can see the mountain. It's on the mountain. It's morphing into 3, back to 1 again. Takes off in the opposite direction with a jet chasing it. And I mean, that is just how lame.
I know, but it's because he said it. He wins because he's the authority and you're not. Yeah. It doesn't matter. It's the old, are you going to believe me or your lying eyes?
Oh, yeah.
Are you going to believe me or your lying eyes? Your eyes are lying if you think that was a UFO. It was a space shuttle because I say so.
Yeah, we'll have 5.
That's how they handle everything, James. They stand on their authority alone that they have given to themselves, and that wins because the media go along with it. As well as I do, our mainstream media is totally co-opted to the money interests that pay for the commercials, really. I mean, I used to work in Hollywood. I'll tell you a story. I used to work in Hollywood in the 1980s as a screenwriter. And because I was from Louisiana, I was given the job of doing the screenplay for the story of the man, Dr. Alton Ochsner, who proved that cigarettes cause lung cancer. And this was when everybody smoked, and nobody even wanted to consider the idea that it was unhealthy. It was un-American to do that because cigarette taxes brought so much money into the country. And I mean, you cannot even imagine the uphill swim this guy had to prove that, but he had the proof. Ultimately, he had the proof, and that's why we think of cigarettes as we do today. But at the time, this was in the early 1980s, 83, 84, we could look it up and be precise, but somewhere in there. And at the time, the cigarette companies had branched out and owned a lot of other companies and a lot of other products. And I think it was ABC that was going to fund and was funding the development of this script that I was writing when I was a screenwriter. And so we turned in the first, I turned in what's called the outline, turned it in, and they were going to, it's a step-by-step process, but they could see what was going on. Somebody at ABC copied that and photocopied it and sent it to one of the main tobacco companies or something. Anyway, the head of ABC got a call very shortly thereafter informing him that if they moved any further forward with that project, that not another commercial with $1 from any of the cigarette companies would ever be shown on that network again. And again, I think it was ABC. I can't remember. But the point is, and so boom, we get a call. That's over. So that just tells you how co-opted they are and have been since then. And I'm certainly before as well. It's all about money. Follow the money.
Pretty
and
much,
so, and so they just don't want to deal with the upheaval and the hassle that's going to come from it. And yet, like always, we have to move forward as a species. We can't just stay in the rut that we're in. We have to, if we're going to take a place at the Galactic Roundtable or whatever's out there that's a seat where a seat is open for us when we grow up enough. I mean, right now we're just a crawling, snot-nosed little baby relative to them in terms of our development. How could they dare? I mean, how could they dare to give us any inside information about unlimited, let's say, energy or those things that we could really use, how to clean up our planet, how to do things, how to become good stewards of the planet. They could do that tomorrow if they could trust us with the technology. But what would we do if they gave it to us? We'd weaponize it. Absolutely. we are still so corrupt at every level that we would weaponize it or try to, and that there'd be it may look like on the surface that we're trying to do what they told us, but at some level we would be trying to weaponize it. Now, my assumption would be that they would be on top of that and would be able to prevent it. But why bother giving it to us until we reach a level of maturity where we can handle it? I don't see it in our lifetimes. I really don't. And, frankly, I think it could be that there's something waiting for us out there collectively. There have been so many catastrophes in the past that have wiped out most of the life on Earth or have driven, advanced civilizations back to the, quote, the Stone Age. And that could be what's in store for us. I'm not saying 2012. I'm not saying 2015. I'm not saying 2020. But I think maybe that they might know something we don't know. If in fact they can, time is manipulable, maybe they know what's ahead for all of us. And it's just not worth trying to help us fix ourselves when there's no point. We're not going to be around that much longer. And again, who's to say that that's true? I'm just totally speculating here. Yeah. But we're not deserving of help right now. And one of the things that I think maybe the Starchild proving alien reality might do is it might allow us to begin to take the first small steps toward acknowledging their reality, their existence, and if we got to that point, then maybe they might expose themselves to us a little more dramatically and see how we handle that, and see, can we grow up into it? Can we mature into it so that they don't have to worry about revealing themselves to us and being killed for their trouble, because
we have to rise.
There's evidence that we've killed some of them in the past. I think there have been some shoot downs. I don't know that Roswell was a shoot down and not an electrical, lightning bolt hits one malfunction, but there are stories of shoot downs, attempted shoot downs where they've shot us down, and shoot downs where we got them one way or another. Yeah. So we're philosophizing now. We've gotten very far off the track of the Starchild and the intervention theory and human origins and all that. But these are interesting things to speculate about, and I'm glad that we're having this opportunity.
Well, it's very clear that we need to rise to the occasion and stop greeting them with aggression and trying to shoot down their ships and then back engineer the technology for the war industry, which seems to be the process that we're in right now. And to me, it's like if I were some off-world, very spiritually or technologically advanced being and came down to the earth, first of all, people would either want to kill you or worship you, one or the other. And second of all, they would be all over your ship for the toys, to cash in on it or to weaponize it or whatever. So to me, what's the point unless there's some kind of a place where they can interface with us in a peaceful manner and in a way that is going to be beneficial, for all concerned. And that's basically one of the things that, why they're coming here, because we've risen to the occasion and we have so much evidence, of ongoing contact. We've had ABC and Fox News out here and Paranormal State and all these guys, and we told them exactly when and where the ships would appear, and they had their cameras rolling and caught them. Undeniable, massive ships, coming in, powering up, lighting up the sky, dropping down and turning around the mountain treetop level, taking off. So.
Well, and if that evidence isn't good enough, what is? And that's, again, jumping back to the Starchild, that's the advantage of DNA, because DNA is exactly that. That is something where they can't just say, are you going to believe us or your lying eyes? Yeah. They have to believe that, because, again, it is the math of biology. Everyone accepts it as such now. It's just irrefutable in every court of law in the world. And so if we get this, which we already have enough fragments of it to know what we're going to have, there's just no doubt we win. So
good foundation.
Now the job for us is just to get the money to do it. And, of course, that's another problem with our field all the time is there's just never enough money to do the things that we need to do. But with something like this, which is such a big project and such an expensive project, it puts us behind a really huge 8-ball. I mean, a really big one. Expensive 8-ball. But, eventually we're going to get it. I've tried very hard to get the money from some private sources where we could have some sense of control at least over what the final product would be. But, I'm getting discouraged to the point where in the early part of next year, if we don't have it squared away by then, I'm just going to go throw it at the feet of Hollywood and just bend over and grab my ankles and hope for the best. There's just no other way around it.
Yeah, that might be the only way to get enough people out there to know about it.
You didn't get them to know. It's getting the right people to know, the people with the money to understand what we're dealing with here and what the potential is to recoup the investment. We're talking a multi-million-dollar investment, and to recoup that, there has to be a plan. There has to be a program, and that's what we have, documentary films of what we'll be doing. So, it would be nice to get it from somebody that would allow us to do it right, to do the right thing, to not Hollywood it up. But if we have to whore ourselves out for it, we'll have to whore ourselves out, and that'll be that. I've done the best I can do, but I can only do so much.
Yeah, I know that there's some major funding, some Rockefeller funding behind certain individuals. I won't mention who in the field, and boy, they've kind of.
But see, you don't want that kind of money. You got to get it from somebody who's just got to try to get untainted money, money without strings if you can get it, so that you can do what is the right thing. And once the wrong kind of people are involved in it, you just get pushed to the side, and the whole thing can be botched. So it's very, very difficult and frightening to think about the responsibility that I have here. Everything I do and everything I've done for the last 13 years, I have felt the white hot light of history just bearing down on me, man. Watching every move, and it's scary. It really is, because you know that you're having to answer not only to all your peers, but to everything that comes after you do. It's and you don't want to look any worse. They always make you look worse than you are, but you don't want to look any worse. Than necessary. So I'm trying hard, but it's not an easy job, man. I'll tell you.
No, it's sad, because what my understanding, after doing some research, I found out that if these PSYOP programs and things like that, they control all sides. They even control the conspiracy side, and they fund these people who get the pulpit, and they get the front row seat and the stage, and they're the head of whatever. It's amazing when you go back and you go, well, how did this guy rise to this level so fast? And you go back and you find out, they came either straight out of military intelligence, or they came out, or they have Rockefeller funding or whatever. And it's amazing when you do the research, you go, well, who out there is walking in impeccable integrity? Who is really trying to get the truth out, and why are they backstage somewhere censored from getting this information out?
Yeah, Michael, I was watching television the other night, and Michael Moore had a great comment about this all the Occupy movements, and they're trying their best to stay nonviolent, but there are agitators drift into every group, and Michael Moore explained to these people that as soon as someone grabs the bullhorn and starts agitating for violence, that person is a plant. You can just absolutely know that person is a plant, which I thought, I hadn't thought of it up to that point, but it certainly made sense to me. Oh, and I should say, too, by the way, since you mentioned military intelligence, I have to say, in all honesty, that I was indeed a military intelligence agent when I joined the Army and when I came out of college in '68. So in '69 and '70, I was indeed a military intelligence intelligence agent. And I didn't really understand what a drawback that would be in this field. And so I used to, put it on my resume as like, this is part of what I did. And everybody immediately and a lot of people still do. As far as I know, a lot of people still do. But I have to tell you, the truth of it is I was a background investigator in a field office in Gainesville, Georgia. And I mean, nothing secret about it. Mm-hmm. It was the peak of the Cold War, 69, 70, 71, in that range. And what had to happen was somebody, and military intelligence did this, somebody had to check on the backgrounds of people who wanted to get secret, top secret, top secret, ultra, all those, the clearances. You had to get them. Well, because of the Cold War and because of Russia's desperate need to infiltrate us and find out our secrets, you had to make sure that everybody who got a clearance was indeed American, had a high school record, had a college record. You could go to their hometown and talk to people about them and find out, just make sure they're a real citizen. It's all you really needed to do. Yeah. And so, the office that I worked in handled North Georgia, but there were offices all over the country. I mean, it was something that was needed, something that was necessary. And so, that's what I did. Most of the time, I have to be honest, we were checking for just to make sure that the young women, the most important thing we did, this is truly the most important thing we did, the most common thing we did most often was to check out young women who were becoming the mistresses of the generals and the officials and the top businessmen. It was kind of an understood thing among everybody of influence in America at that time. Mm-hmm. When you take a new mistress, have her checked out for free. Yeah. Just give us her name and we'll check her out and make sure that she's not a Russian plant. Because a lot of them were. The Russians had a lot of beautiful women here who have been very well trained to try to co-opt men of influence to get information. Mm-hmm. So, this is not a particularly, what did you do in the war, Daddy kind of thing where you're really proud to talk about it. That's what I did, and so we've had Bob Dean up here, and I totally respect him, and I think you have a double indemnity there when you were in the military and you come out and start speaking or getting outside the box. It's you really got to walk that path of integrity. Because what a good guy Bob Dean is. I don't know how well you know him, or for those who are listening, that is one of the most charming, erudite, polished gentleman, and just a great lecturer. Just a fine guy.
Oh, he had a blast up here. He got to come and see the ships himself, and he actually did some remote viewing and saw what was going on inside the mountain in front of us, and he left a real happy camper. Everybody loved him, and he got his cigar and his Jack Daniels and sat out there, and he talked all night long around the campfire and entertained everybody. But
he's really a remarkable guy. He truly is.
When I first spoke at the Congress there, he came up to me and I met him, and he told me, he says, James, he said, I know you're for real. I know, he goes, I can sense who's for real and who's not for real. And he said, I'm going to give you one advice. He said that to listen to. He says, never change your story. Don't try to make it any bigger than it is. And just walk 100% integrity path, because he said they're going to come after you, and they're going to do all they can to catch you anywhere, in the work. And boy, he was right. That was a wonderful piece of advice. And I was kind of naive when I first went out there. I just thought everybody wanted to hear my story and look at the evidence and see what was going on. And I had a very very rude awakening after doing that.
Right. Well, it's pretty much the same here, and Bob gave me similar advice as well. Just when you start pushing any kind of a boundary hard, there are going to be people who are going to push back. That's the way it works.
What I'd love to get into? We are right in the middle of Bigfoot country. Right. And here, what's funny, you talk to the local people here, and the forest rangers and the people who've been here for a while, I don't think there's anybody that doesn't believe in Bigfoot here. And, a lot of the people have actually experienced it. Some on a closer level than others. And there's actually a little cabin here on the furthermost part of town. After our little town of Trot Lake, it turns into wilderness area. It's all, Forest Service and just pretty rugged out there. But there's people that actually put apples out and cucumbers, because they said they love apples and cucumbers, and they come in and they pick up the apples, they pick up the cucumbers. And if you're there in this little cabin and you don't put the food out for them, they'll come and actually shake the cabin at night and just scare the hell out of you. And my nephew was one of the people that was out there and had that experience.
Right. Well, hominoids are real. I mean, I am one of the things I do is hominoid research. Hominoids are real. There's no doubt about it. Have been real. In my book, in the new ebook that I have, for people who are really interested in this, if your audience is interested at all and they would like some facts to use to support the idea of hominoid reality, in my ebook, Intervention Theory Essentials, I go into some considerable detail about what the hominoids are, where they came from on the Earth, what are their predecessors, and of course they're the Miocene apes, and you read about it. And then I also have an extended section about there are just a few things that I consider the very best proofs of hominoid reality. Like as undeniable as DNA. One of them is the Patterson film. I don't care what you hear about that. That was legitimate.
I agree.
Another one is the Minnesota Iceman. I don't care what you hear about that. That was legitimate. I saw that with my own eyes. I was able to study it in considerable detail, and so I write it up to an extent that I never have before in this new the new Intervention Theory Essentials ebook. And I also cover in great detail the Xana story, the hominoid, the Alma's type hominoid that was captured and held in a Russian village from about 1850 to when she died in about 1890. She's there for 40 years. And while she was there, she gave birth to 8 human Alma's hybrid children, 4 of which lived to adulthood and went on to have families of their own. It's an incredible story, but it's also extremely well documented by Russian hominologists who in the 1960s, when they were getting her story down, there were over a dozen people still living who knew her when they were children and were at her funeral. I mean, when they buried her. So this is incredibly convincing testimony and proof of at least her reality, but there are others as well like that. So if someone's really serious about wanting to learn a little more about the actual reality of hominoids, everything is wrong. In that book, I have a very large segment about it, but also the new ebook is, much more immediate, a lot more pictures, and is a good place to start. If it's a great starting place for that if you're just getting into it.
I saw a female up here, Bigfoot, and 50 feet away, and for about 5 minutes we sat there and stared at each other. It was and so I have no doubt. I saw her stand up and walk right past me, and I could see her breasts, and I mean, she was big, and when she stood up and walked past me, I said, "What was I doing? What was I thinking? Good thing they're friendly." But you should have snapped. You should have had your cell phone camera for that one. Yeah, I did.
Same thing with hominoids, though. Eventually, somebody like you is going to be there with a cell phone and have the presence of mind, and not just be one person. It'll be 2 or 3 together, and it'll be the same thing as the UFO thing. Eventually, hominoids are going to be proved real.
Oh, yeah.
UFOs and aliens are going to be proved real, and the problem why people don't understand, when the average person says, "Well, why do scientists care? Why do they give you such trouble?" It's because it's going to up in their reality, change their world, make their lives so miserable as they have to redo and rewrite everything, that those are the two things they really want to keep from happening as long as possible, even though they are as aware as you and I are that they are real. All you have to do is talk to them in private, and many of them will acknowledge it. Others are like, fundamentalist Christians. No, no. They just won't accept that anything could be wrong or not right in the Bible or something like that. Well, it's the same thing with the paradigm. There are those who are extremely conservative and you can't get an inch out of them, and then there are others who are very liberal, right out on the cutting edge, and they say, yeah, I'm looking forward to the day, but I can't come out of the closet now as a believer because, that's the end of my career or the end of my grant or whatever.
I had a colonel in the Air Force call me, and he was saying, why are you lying and misleading people about the UFOs and all this stuff? And he said, I'm Colonel something, and I go, really? And he goes, yeah. And I said, you're Colonel? And he said, yes. And I said, and you're outside the loop?
Yeah, right.
And you don't know about this? And he got really quiet. I said, come on. I said, I have NASA people come up here. I've had colonels. I've had, I said, all these people, and I named some of them. I said, they've been up here. We all know it's real. And he got really quiet. And he says, and I said, so, and I said, plus, I'm a civilian. I said, I got a little cocky. I said, can you spell civilian? I said, I don't think you can really tell me what I can talk about and what I can't talk about. And I said, if you can, then show me why, why you have that authority. But he kind of calmed down, and it was really, we started talking about it. He says, he goes, we just want to catch one. He said they've been chasing. Well,
he's outside the loop because we've caught a few.
Yeah. He said he's been
well outside the loop.
Yeah, they've been chasing them for a while. He said that. I guess his group just want to catch one or something is what he was saying, because they've been chasing them and burning up a lot of fuel. But anyway. But anyway, going back into the Bigfoot thing, what's really interesting here, I mean, everybody's accepted it, and I'll tell you what I've seen and some other people saw, and this is kind of a mind blower. One, there's usually a lot of connections between UFOs being seen or light balls of light flying around and Bigfoot contacts, which is actually exactly what I saw. I saw a ball of light moving through the forest, going around trees, everything. Actually, we even went around a vehicle, and then Bigfoot ended up right where the ball of light ended up, which I thought was interesting. And what was even weird is that when I saw it, it walked right in front of me, right past, on a diagonal past me. It didn't make it to the forest. It just phased out, and I thought I was losing it. I had to rub my eyes and did I really see this thing? So I kind of feel there's different levels of this Bigfoot phenomenon. I think one might be kind of primitive, running around out there, that's very aligned with nature. There does seem to be another one that is more advanced or somehow connected to the UFOs.
Well, personally, I have to tell you, James, I know next to nothing about that. Although I have friends like Jack Lepsaritis Kawani, if you know him, and he's very convinced of the same position that hominoids are interdimensional beings and all that. I don't say that it's impossible for aliens to have the technology to shapeshift and assume a guise that projects out into our brains as something that they think we might be comfortable seeing, which is a Bigfoot, because they're in the woods or they're on the planet. And so okay, I'm gonna make myself look like this thing that this human won't freak out about. But in fact, we do freak out when we see it because we see it so seldom. But the reality of it is like what you were talking about, the ones that live on the ground and they are real beings. I think they're real beings. 99 or better percent, they're real, just creatures of Earth. They have a long-standing biological background on the Earth that goes back at least 20 million years to a fossil named Morotopithecus, which had a spine bone that's virtually indistinguishable from ours. So we know that it was bipedal. Now, you try to sell that idea, even though I got it from a book about it called The Upright Ape, which talks about the various Miocene apes that were clearly upright or capable of upright walking. So they go back 20 million years on the Earth. That's a heck of a long time to be here, to have this be their planet, right?
Well, what about evolving? You know, if you've been here 20 million years, and where would they go? And maybe they evolved through the nature kingdom into nature, and are, you know, like some of the Native Americans can shapeshift.
You've got to look at the whole concept.
Like that.
You have to look at the whole concept of evolution, though, James, and that is not necessarily. It isn't at all, in fact, in my opinion, the way the mainstream puts it out there. I believe what Darwin found was microevolution. He found changes in the beaks of finches on different islands. He found changes in the shells of tortoises on different islands. And he then extrapolated the concept of macroevolution, which is evolution of one thing into another thing. There is no evidence of that, and Darwin himself said it. I don't see it, I can't find it, and if nobody else can find it, then my theory's wrong. Well, science got such a boost from the theory by the time they began to realize there were no intermediate phases or forms between different species. By the time they understood that, well, Darwin, evolution had unseated religion as far as being the controller of what people thought about existence and life and all that. Well, they didn't want to give it up, so they began to then circle the wagons the way religion used to circle the wagons when somebody like Galileo said, hey, you think the Earth's the center of everything, but it's really not. Well, okay, we're going to burn you to the stake if you don't shut that up. It was that kind of thing. They've circled the wagons around evolution, around Darwinian evolution, when it's clear it does not work. There are no examples of macroevolution. There is microevolution. So it's acceptable that, to me, that within those 20 million years, there may have been some microevolution, but that's the maximum I'll allow. Those hominoids came. I think everything gets put here. I think everything arrives here. I don't believe that it evolves. I in my book, the intervention theory essentials particularly, I talk about, I think everything on the Earth has been terraformed from day one. I mean, from the beginning of the planet, everything that's been brought here has been brought here on a schedule and with a purpose toward making this planet develop into something that would sustain higher life and be, quote, the paradise that it is today and has been for 500 million years.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. My thing is that I don't really have any attachment. I just had an experience, and I don't. How that is defined, is up to a lot of different people, and whatever comes out of that is great.
I don't say that it's impossible, but I think that it's not the common hominoid experience. I think they're living, breathing flesh beings, and that when people say they reach the woods and then they kind of disappear, I think that's what they do. I mean, I think it's not physical disappearing. It's just they're great at hiding in their environment. They're masters of their environment. One of the things, excuse me for asking, but I'll get into a story, but it looks like we might be running out of time.
Yeah, we are right at the top of the hour.
Just give me how much time I have left, and I'll cut it to that size.
We're actually we've got about a minute.
So, okay. Well, I will tell everybody in the ebook, go look at the panda story in either Everything You Know Is Wrong or Intervention Theory Essentials. I have a wonderful story about the panda, which explains a lot of how they can be out there and we don't know about it, because people, their first thought is, well, if they're out there, why don't we see them? Why don't we know about it? And it has to be explained, but when it's explained, you will understand.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we are so loud when we go out into the forest and walk around. And anything that's wild, that's lived in the forest, they know we're coming, a long a long ways away, and they could move out of the way or not engage us. It's to me,
Well,
it's
the panda's a great story, James, and I think
yeah.
anybody that goes looking for that one will be glad that they did. It's very, very fascinating.
Well, there's so much we can cover. I think we could probably get into another 2-hour show. I'll have to get you in on my other show so we can really get in depth into this.
This has been a good hour. I appreciate you for having me on, and I'll look forward to coming on again at some point in the future.
Great. Well, thanks a lot for coming on the show, and we'll have all your information up on the site if people want to look more into your research. Right. And keep up the good work.
Thank you, James, very much.
All right, this is James Gilliland with World Puja signing off. Have a great day, and watch the skies and watch the forest. There's things out there that you just might be the one that gets it on camera. Have a good day.